Man, oh man, coming up, an interview with one of rock and roll's most legendary singers. I'm telling you, Robert Plant, Freddie Mercury, Ann Wilson of Heart, they've all cited him as the great one. He's going to tell us the story behind arguably his most iconic songs. He's had so many. This song, it took radio by storm, and according to stats, it's played about every 45 seconds in this country. It came after the band played a horrible gig where only about 30 people showed up. They didn't really notice the band at all. That's from interviews with other band members. They needed something that would wow the crowd and take them to the next level. They were so determined. They wrote this song in about 10 minutes. Next thing they knew, they were playing it at a gig in front of 600,000 people happened thereafter. Find out the history of this classic from the legend who created it. Coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you've ever had sea monkeys or chia heads or a pet rock, you're going to dig this channel of pure musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now. Click the big red button, click the bell so you always know when our interviews are dropping. Also, check out our exclusive content on Patreon and our latest merch. Keeps it a daily channel. We got a great one for you today. From one of rock's most legendary singers. I'm excited to bring you another episode from our series Revelations. Our featured artists go deep on their greatest songs and albums. Stories you really won't find anywhere else. So Paul Rodgers, the iconic fire-breathing phenomenon, the vocal legend, legend's legend. I mean, Jimmy Page has said he's astounded by the power of Paul Rodgers' voice. Brian Johnson of AC/DC said this about him. He was the epitome of what every rock and roll singer should be. He had the looks, the moves, and a soulful voice that made everything swing. Paul Rodgers, a man that Eric Clapton calls the real deal, who Robert Plant calls the voice of all British voices. Brian May of Queen calls him simply the greatest blues rock singer alive. Paul Stanley of Kiss said, "First time I heard All Right Now, I knew this was the voice of someone who would write his own chapter in the book of great rock and roll singers." He's written a few chapters. And, you know, when Ann Wilson of Heart was asked who she would sing a duet with, she had her choice, and her first choice was Paul Rodgers. Check this out in my interview. I've read that there were several different vocalists that were possibly going to sing the duet with you.
Yeah, they asked me to sing the song, and they gave me my choice. They said, in a perfect world, which man would you like to sing with? And I went, Paul Rodgers. Yeah. You know, without even skipping a beat.
I mean, whether in Free or Bad Company or The Firm or even solo, this man, it's what God created the blueprint for a rock and roll voice. It's Paul Rodgers. And guess what? He's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. What the hell? It's a sick joke, in my opinion. When it comes right down to it, Paul Rodgers is too good for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They don't deserve him. Well, Paul Rodgers is not only one of the greatest singers ever, he's also a survivor. He just powered through some trying times, truly trying times with his health. He had to learn to read and speak again, and he's just released a brand new album of original songs. I was so fortunate to sit down with him for a long time. And coming up next, he's going to tell us the amazing story of one of the greatest songs in history. It's a cornerstone of classic rock radio. All Right Now. All right now, baby, it's all right. Wrote it with Andy Fraser when he was fronting Free. The story of this song is so crazy. They were playing a gig where there was only about 30 people, and the people didn't even notice him coming in and on and off the stage. They just felt like they needed something in their repertoire that would get everybody singing and shouting and just rock the house. And so they came up with All Right Now, like on the spot right after the show. Paul Rodgers wrote the lyrics on his way to a gig, and they played it that night. I'll let him tell you the story. Amazing story. And he's also got an incredible new album, and we're going to talk about that. It's called Midnight Rose. I tell you, this interview, it's a can't miss with a true legend. As we go into it, I do want to thank our sponsor, Zenni. I wear the glasses I always wear. Right now, you can get up to 80% off regular retail prices. Everything from reading glasses to progressive lenses to transition lenses, sunglasses, you name it. You can also add amazing features like blue blocks to protect your eyes from digital blue light. Make sure to click on our info button right up here to get our special POR price. Here it is, Paul Rodgers. Let's talk about co-writing All Right Now with Andy Fraser. You were 17, but Andy was only like 15. It's such a cool story about how this happened. After a gig in Durham, and it was slow and medium-paced blues songs that you guys were playing, I read somewhere that the gig was only like 30 people there, but there's so many urban legends over time, right?
We did do some gigs that were great and some gigs that were like, all a learning curve. It's where you cut your teeth, really. You learn your lessons. We were playing a lot of blues, and we were a blues band, and it was all covers. And gradually, Andy and I started to write songs. And so we were at a point where we were about half original and half blues. And so I remember saying to Andy, the way we can have a voice, an identity, is to have a whole set of our own songs. Because if you looked around and you looked at the Beatles, you looked at the Cream, you looked at Hendrix, all these people were writing their own songs and playing them. And I said, the more songs that are original we can put in the set, the better. But there was one song, which was The Hunter by Albert King, which we used to love it. It was the first song we played, or one of the first. And Cos and I decided we should do this song, The Hunter, and Born Under a Bad Sign as well, I should add. So we did this song, The Hunter, and we could not really drop that song. It was too good in the set. So Andy and I got together and I said, we should try and write something that's at least as good as The Hunter, right? I mean, you'll never do it, right? But it was a good attempt. So I said something simple like, all right now, like that. I said, well, maybe that should be the chorus. All right now, baby, it's all right. And so Andy took that away and he came back with bam, boom, bam. That's, which is great for a big stadium, So I wrote the lyrics and I had to, okay, so it's all right now. What happened before then, Well, there she stood in the street. What was she doing? Smart. And all the lyrics just poured out. She stood in the street, smiling. And we did it that night and the audience just loved it. And they called for it again. We opened with it. They wanted it at the end of the set again. So I knew it had something. Yeah.
Well, I read that Ringo Starr was a little bit of an influence. You'd read an interview that he gave back in the day about the way the Beatles wrote the songs about love songs.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I did notice that when Ringo said, if you notice, they're all about love, and I thought, that's a good point because love is probably the answer. I'm sure it is. And it's a good theme because I figured that, every time two people meet and fall in love, it's a brand new story. So a brand new story means a brand new song, right? So there's a limitless amount of material there, It's all, everyone has their own story and it's unique. And it's a good subject for songwriting,
I said, hey, what's your name, baby?
Every story is a brand new story, even though there's thousands of love songs. When you meet somebody new, that's a brand new story. And it's very exciting, I find.
Well, you wrote the lyrics while you were waiting to be picked up for a gig. The guys picked you up for the gig that night.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
You hurried and finished them off and you played it that night, as you said.
Yeah.
That's very cool. I read a story about Nelson Riddle when he was working with Sinatra and they were on their way to the recording studio and Nelson Riddle was in there writing, I've Got You Under My Skin, the arrangement. He wasn't finished and had to get it done that quickly. And that's what brought a lot of that magic to life.
I've got you under my skin.
It is magic, isn't it? I mean, under the gun like that, and with a bit of stress, it does encourage you to get it done. And yeah, but Cos used to pick us all up, and Cos was an amazing driver. It was really, he was the only one with the license, so he was driving the whole band around for all those early, the couple of those early years anyway.
Well, I know that the song took off All Right Now after the Isle of Wight Festival on August 31st, 1970, I believe it was. 600,000 people in attendance, and they went crazy over the song.
Well, yeah. It really did work. The bigger, the better.
It's rumored this song is played every 45 seconds on classic rock radio somewhere. I mean, it really is one of the cornerstones of classic rock, All Right Now. And the vocal is one of the best ever. Do you remember when you were doing the vocal?
What do I remember about recording it? I remember we recorded it. There was 2 studios at Island Records. There was one above and one down in the basement. And the down in the basement was much smaller. So we recorded All Right Now, as I recall, down in the basement. And they were doing the backing to it. The band sometimes did that. I would actually overdub the vocals because it kept it cleaner. There wasn't an open mic with somebody singing in it. So made it cleaner recording. So I would put the vocal on afterwards sometimes. And so they recorded it, and they were happy with it. And I said, just give me one more time. So they did it. They did, oh, we've got it. It's down there. Oh, just one. So they did one more time. And I don't know which one we used actually in the end, to be honest. I think it might have been the one they did extra. But anyway, I leapt out there and did the vocal almost immediately afterwards. And Chris Blackwell came in with a couple of beautiful girls. And I must admit, it influenced it influenced the performance a little bit. So
you could definitely hear it. Well, the album version, it's about a minute longer than the radio edit. Those damn radio edits back then, they would edit it down, but love the album version.
So we took out the last verse, which was really a repeat of the second verse, I think. So there's all kinds of versions now that we've ended up with. By playing it live, it moves and shifts, and you do different things. The bass part becomes longer, the guitar solo gets longer. Like, the Coss's big build, when it does that, that can get so long with that, depending on the guitar player. I'm looking, I'm thinking, well, okay, come on,
Yeah. Well, there was a long time where you didn't play it. You didn't play it for almost 20 years.
Free had split up and I had left the band. And then I went on to form Bad Company. And I really thought the aim was to always keep moving forward and always keep writing. And if you'd form a new band, you've got to form a new, set of material. Yeah. And we proceeded to do. So All Right Now was kind of in the back burner for me. So I didn't do it for a long, long time. But then it found its way back into, I'll tell you how it found its way back. I did a blues album.
The Muddy Waters.
Yeah.
She moves me mad.
I was touring with with Jason Bonham and a bunch of people, great people. And Jason was a big Free fan. So he was always trying, come on, let's do Mr. Big, let's do Fire and Water, let's do All Right Now, And I was going, every night I'd go, no, Jason, this is a blues tour. We're just going to do blues, okay? And then one night the audience picked up on this and they said, let's do All Right Now. Come on, let's do. Oh, God. And so then the audience, the front row of the audience picked up on this and they were calling for it too. So I had the band on stage and the audience out front and just me going, that is a blues tour, isn't it? And so I said, well, okay. And we did it. And it was amazing how fresh it was at that point in time, having not played it for such a long.
That's such a great story. Yeah, that Fire and Water album had such a huge impact. I remember my dad showing me that as a kid and looking at the cover. That's when I was discovering vinyl. And it had such an influence on so many that came from Brian May to Robert Plant to all these incredible musicians. But Simon Kirke, I read in an interview that he said it became a bit of an albatross because it wasn't followed up really. And And so it became a little bit of something like that for you guys.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we were just doing what we did, what came naturally to us. I know that Brian May from Queen and Roger Taylor, they were telling me that they wore out their copy of Fire and Water. It was their Bible, is what they said. I was like, wow. I mean, we really didn't realize just how much of an influence we were having because we were just doing our thing, you know.
Well, it was in a TV ad for Wrigley's chewing gum, and it pushed it back into the charts in the 90s, in the UK charts. And I read a funny story how they used it in a foot powder advertisement, and you had to call Chris Blackwell and say, hey, you gotta get this off.
Yeah, I did. I mean, it lasted a week. He power to him. He did shift it. He did stop it straight away. But it took a week to stop it.
Cool, refreshing Wrigley's spearmint gum.
You know, it's got to be somewhat cool. You know what I mean? You can't just have smelly feet advertisements. So
Yeah.
That's not cool.
Free, that first album, and All Right Now, it's like one of the cornerstones of rock and roll, one of those songs that you hear it, you know exactly what it is from the first second that you hear it, and that vocal, and it's just one of those legendary songs that will live on 5,000 years from now.
Well, I'm sure Cos is looking down and saying thank you, and Andy, yeah.
I think your new album, Midnight Rose, is on par with some of your best stuff. It's an incredible album. Love all 8 songs on it.
We are not alone.
First true solo album of new original material in 25 years since Electric, and produced by Bob Rock and your wife Cynthia, and working with Sun Records. That's why we're
Oh no, how about that? Hey, Sun Records. Did you wear that for me?
I did.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, how cool is it to be on Sun Records, where it all started in 1954 with Elvis cutting "That's All Right, Mama."
Oh, I know. I mean, wow. I couldn't have. I mean, I'm speechless. Really, it's so great because it's just fallen into my lap in many ways. Because I remember being a kid, and my best friend Peter Smith, we stole his bigger brother's, record, and we put it on the player. You know, we put the needle on. Well, since my baby left me, boom, and I was like, "Wow, listen to that!" You know.
Since my baby left me, well, I found a new place to dwell.
I never thought I would be on the label. You know, it's so amazing.
Wow, dream come true. Well, Midnight Rose, you said it grew from sparks of ideas you've had.
There wasn't actually a plan to make an album. There wasn't a big, let's make an album in capital letters or anything like that. It was just, let's go in the studio and have fun. And that's how it started. We recorded a whole bunch of tracks. Then we took the whole thing, the whole shebang, to Bryan Adams' studio in Vancouver. The core tracks, the bed tracks, were put down locally here in BC, and then we took it to Bryan Adams' studio in Vancouver and brought on board Bob Rock, and Cynthia started to produce. She was doing a bit of production with the core tracks, but she got really serious with Bob Rock, and a brilliant job.
Let's talk about Melting, because that's one of my favorite tracks on there. I think it's one of your best vocals in years. It's just such a great song.
I'm just a man.
I play acoustic guitar on that track, and it's kind of bluesy. I think it's influenced by blues players generally. I think of John Lee Hooker. That sort of thing. And I just like the groove of it. It's about, I think it's the same sort of place I was at when I wrote the song Bad Company with Kirky there.
Bad company, and I won't deny.
It's the same sort of vibe, same sort of place in my head of early settlers in America with vast open spaces and the lawlessness. Again, lawlessness out there, which was frightening, I guess, you know.
Well, Take Love is a song that you perform with Queen, and now finally a studio version for the first time.
Take love when you find it.
Tell me about the history of that song, Take Love.
That was the history of that song. Is I was sitting there with my guitar, as I mentioned earlier, and we had this kit. I call them kitties. She doesn't like that. I call it, it's a cat. She's a Siamese rescue cat. And she was very proud and very arch, and you couldn't get close to her to love her. You know, you couldn't, you know, she didn't like that. She was very touchy. And so I overheard my wife say to Sheriday, you know, I can't love you if you keep walking away, Sheriday. And I thought, oh, that's a good idea for a line of a song. And that was the first line, see. So it went from there, and I built out the song.
Love you, baby. You keep on hiding away.
Which is a very, the thing about people walking away when people are trying to love them is that it's a very human thing as well as kitties, you know. So it's just an expression of that feeling, basically.
Oh man, make sure to get Paul's new album, Midnight Rose. We're going to link to it below. You will not regret it. It's I think it's one of his best solo albums. Amazing. Make sure to leave us a comment about Paul, about All Right Now, about the band Free. What is your favorite iteration of Paul's enormous gift as a singer? Free, Bad Company, The Firm? Let us know below. Let's have a great discussion. The fact that he's not in the Hall of Fame, just ridiculous. Let's discuss that in the comments. Let's start a petition. If you dig our content, we invite you to subscribe. We would love to have you as part of our community where we do interviews all the time and keep the history of rock and roll. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.